Hey guys, Dr. Shawn, Doctor of Functional Medicine. Today, we're talking about the top 3 root causes of most thyroid hormone imbalance, but especially of autoimmune thyroid. So let's dive in. So when we're talking about the root causes, here's the biggest misconception when it comes to having a thyroid hormone imbalance is that it's not most of the time an issue with your thyroid. So oftentimes the thyroid gland is getting blamed for something that it's not actually the root cause of. So here's what happens. People will go to the doctor and they'll have symptoms of a thyroid hormone imbalance, whether that's body temperature differences, they've got constipation issues, they've got fatigue, or they've got a weight imbalance. They've got some type of metabolic concern. So they test TSH. Maybe they'll test T4, which, by the way, is a completely incomplete thyroid panel. It doesn't tell you really anything about the complete function of the thyroid, but they'll test TSH as the gold standard, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, which is a hormone from the brain. Right? Then they'll test maybe a T4, and based on that imbalance, they'll give you a medication. Here's the issue with that, is that prescribing you a medication to manipulate TSH and T4 most of the time, based on my clinical experience over the past 2 decades, is not ever going to address the metabolic concern that you have or the imbalance that's happening with the thyroid. Let's talk about why. Most imbalances that occur with your thyroid oftentimes are coming from the gut. And let me explain. There are big triggers that actually drive autoimmune imbalance to the thyroid. And if you have an autoimmune component, something like thyroid peroxidase antibodies or thyroglobulin antibodies that are off, and therefore driving something like Hashimoto's, then if you do not address the cause of the autoimmune disease that's attacking the thyroid gland, you won't ever be able to balance the thyroid hormones. And here's why. Because imagine these cells of your thyroid that are carrying your hormone, right? T4, T3. If your immune system is for some reason attacking those cells and destroying them, you're leaking out and losing that hormone within the body without getting any type of metabolic or hormone benefit from it. So what would drive something like autoimmune thyroid or cause those antibodies to go high? Why would your immune system all of a sudden start attacking the thyroid gland? The 3 biggest root causes of this are Epstein-Barr virus, gluten within your diet, and mold or mycotoxins. But let's break each of those down. So Epstein-Barr virus is a common virus that so many people have. In fact, it's estimated over 90% of the population has Epstein-Barr virus. It's a virus within the herpes family, oftentimes called mono. What here is the concern is a lot of people who have Epstein-Barr virus don't ever remember getting mono in the first place. But if you have Epstein-Barr virus, that virus is actually very similar structurally to the thyroid gland. And so your immune system oftentimes confuses the Epstein-Barr virus that it's trying to attack with your thyroid tissue. And lo and behold, we develop an autoimmune thyroid condition because you're mistaking a virus, the immune system is, for the thyroid tissue. So if you have or are concerned about potentially having Epstein-Barr virus, which oftentimes causes a lot of chronic fatigue and brain fog, it can cause a lot of eczema and skin issues that are recurring that people can't seem to get over. If you have concerns with that, it's very simple to test for Epstein-Barr virus. You do it in the blood work, and you actually have 4 markers that you test for. You have an IgM, and you have 3 IgG markers. If you have questions about that, we'll put a link and some information down below this video so that you can go and get tested for Epstein-Barr virus properly and rule that out as a potential autoimmune thyroid issue or just a potential thyroid issue. The second one is gluten. Now, here's a tough conversation because it's tough to talk about getting rid of all forms of gluten in your diet. So here's the confusion around gluten. Gluten is any grain. It's wheat, barley, and rye. It's corn, it's rice, it's millet, it's sorghum. It's all grains, guys. And that's tough because that's in a lot of foods. In fact, even think about your soda pop, right? It contains high fructose corn syrup. That means that soda contains gluten, right? It contains corn. So if you truly want to heal the thyroid issue that you have, whether it's just a hypothyroid or it's hyperthyroid or it's an autoimmune thyroid, then one of the number one things that you can do in your diet, the first thing I would recommend out of the gates, and I've helped people reduce and essentially eliminate autoimmune thyroid conditions, the first thing you can do, get rid of the gluten. Get rid of all grains. Get used to eating protein, right? Get your protein source, right? Your meat, your fish, whatever that is. Get your vegetables, get your fruits, you're good to go. Try to get all the gluten out. Don't be deceived by a product that says gluten-free because oftentimes when it says gluten-free, that's a lot of times considering people who have celiacs that can't do wheat, barley, and rye. So what they'll do, they take out the wheat, barley, and rye, but they switch it out with millet or corn or rice. Don't be mistaken by that. A lot of times, eating a gluten-free product, it's actually being shown in research now is far worse for your health than the regular gluten product to begin with. Number 3, and again, this is a tough one, it's mold or mycotoxicity. This is, again, one of the top 3 triggers I find that drives autoimmune thyroid and thyroid hormone imbalance. And the only way to know if you truly have an issue with mold, because it might be hiding in your environment at home or at work, something you're being exposed to in the environment or in your diet, because grains and dairy and nuts and coffee, a lot of different foods have high mold and mycotoxin count. The only way to know for sure is to run a urine test. It's called a mycotoxin panel. This will evaluate molds and mycotoxins in your environment, and it'll actually show if you are overwhelmed by them, if you have too high of a level. And I can tell you right now, mold is one of the worst root cause issues you'll ever deal with. Not just for thyroid issue, really for any type of imbalance, inflammation issue, or disease in the body. So testing for mold, or better yet, mycotoxins, which are the poisonous spores from mold, testing that mycotoxin panel is a huge test to rule out as a root cause right out of the gates when you're trying to deal with a thyroid imbalance. So test for those mycotoxins. If you are high in them, it means your body is having a hard time excreting and detoxing and keeping up with what's in your environment or your diet, and it's time to actually go through a proper detox process for that. So let's review those really quick. Epstein-Barr virus, we can test in the blood. There's 4 markers with the immune system to look at that Epstein-Barr virus and rule out if you have it or not. The second one is gluten. That's a tough one in the diet, but again, getting all that gluten out is huge, and that's not just for thyroid issues. That's healing the gut. That's healing the immune system. That is reducing the risk of all chronic inflammatory disease. And then number 3 is mold, or essentially running a mycotoxin panel for those poisonous spores from mold toxicity. And then if that is high, going through a proper detox process to eliminate that. A couple last things I want to mention when it comes to your thyroid. Again, I mentioned that testing things like TSH and T4, which typically is the gold standard, is insufficient testing if you want to have a full picture of what's going on with your thyroid gland. The full lab is a minimum of 13 markers, and that includes T4 free in total, T3 free in total, thyroxine binding globulin, reverse T3, vitamin D, ferritin, thyroid peroxidase antibodies, thyroglobulin antibodies. That's just a minimum that you really need to be looking at when it comes to your thyroid gland to determine what is actually the issue. Are you not making enough T4, which is inactive? Are you not converting T4 into T3, which is your active hormone for the thyroid? Are you not absorbing and utilizing that T3? Or are you making reverse T3, which is an inflammatory or infection issue in the body? Or do you have an autoimmune thyroid issue? And remember, if you have an autoimmune component, that has to be addressed first before the thyroid can ever heal and get to an optimal level of hormones. So a couple of things to think about. If you do not have good levels of cholesterol in your body, let's say you're on a statin medication and you're driving your cholesterol too low, cholesterol is needed in the liver to make bile acid, and that bile acid doesn't just help with digesting foods and keeping digestion on track, it actually helps with T4 to T3 conversion. So again, without the proper initial testing of your thyroid, you wouldn't even know where to begin addressing the root cause of your thyroid imbalance. But again, we have to look at other things besides just TSH and T4. We have to know, do you have good bile acid? Do you have good cholesterol levels? Do you have good vitamin D levels? Vitamin D is essential, as well as iron in your body, to actually be able to make, produce, and utilize those thyroid hormones properly to improve your metabolism, to improve your energy, your mental state, your weight, your body temperature, all of those metabolic functions. So if you guys have questions, we definitely want to make sure that we get you the information you need. We're going to put some links down below to what is a full comprehensive thyroid panel. That is something that's easy to get tested, not necessarily through most doctors, because they're going to base your needs on insurance, and that's where the TSH and T4 only come in, because that's the only thing that unfortunately the medication prescribed will address. They're not addressing the full imbalance. So if you guys need help with that testing, if you have more questions, we want to know those questions below. We're going to make sure we get them answered and help you guys to begin to take control of and recreate your health. So do me a favor, if you guys like this video, if you want more content like this, do me a favor and like this video and subscribe. That way, the next time I get a great idea, you guys will be there to watch it. Catch you on the next video.